Welcome to the Legislate podcast, where we share the latest insights and trends in property, technology, business building, and contract drafting. Today, we have a wonderful guest, James Owusu, the CEO and founder of Checkboard. In this conversation, we will go into James's background and just learn about Checkboard and how they do contracts. So, without any further ado, James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Charles, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. So, my name is James. I'm the founder of Checkboard. My background, I would probably start off with my property experience. I bought my first property in 2014 when I started my career in financial services. And for the following 7 years after that, I continued to buy more properties, and I stopped buying properties when I got to a nine property portfolio. And this was also the same time I decided to start Checkboard. So any questions you're willing to ask or want to understand about the landlord space, I would say I can safely answer them. And with my experience, I built Checkboard to solve the pain I had of rent arrears and how to reduce or eliminate rent arrears altogether.
So, as you build that portfolio of 9 properties, how were you choosing the properties? Where were they based? And why were you getting rent arrears?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. I don't think anybody's asked it in that way before. So my first property was in London, within a high growth area of North London. That property has rented out successfully over the 7 year period with only one point in time where I had rent arrears. This was due to the fact that it was a council tenant, and there was some mixed up between the council making the payments and them receiving the payments. So that was a bit of an anomaly, I would say. So it's hard to build to account for such circumstances. The other property that I've got, I'll probably say the ones that I've had rent arrears on. I had a property in Blackburn. I was chasing the yield conversation. Back then, there was a massive go up north, Northern Powerhouse. You're gonna get high yielding properties. Not many people told me that with high yielding properties come significant arrears or people just not paying. So it kind of makes sense why the yields are so high. And ultimately, that's when I discovered the challenge of uh, having a distant relationship with your property. You can't easily walk down to it. You might not be fully aware of the challenges in the area. So I had rent arrears there because tenants either A, couldn't afford it, or they lost their jobs. Most of them were self-employed, so it was slightly tricky as well. And more recently, over the last 3 or 4 years, I bought some properties in Norwich. I've got 6 flats over there. And throughout the COVID pandemic, that was the first time I experienced rent arrears, and most of it was due to outright fraud. People lying about their incomes, which other referencing company didn't pick up, or people using a a recruiter who's a friend to confirm their income via the employment reference. Again, something other referencing companies sadly couldn't pick up, uh, and that leads into you know why Chipboard's solution is slightly different and hopefully eliminates more fraud than our competitors. We don't really rely on any, I would say, subjective facts. Let's call it that. And when I say subjective fact, I'm referring to a reference from somebody else, asking a previous landlord how was this person, or asking an employer, how likely is this person to keep their job going forward, or how much they earn. We rely more on objective facts, which are information that we capture from the applicant's bank account, information that is irrefutable because it has happened in the past. It is more data driven and more factual than an email from somebody who might not be the manager, or somebody who might not actually work for the company entirely. So these are the things that we focus on within Checkboard, and why I built Checkboard.
Yeah, that's fascinating and a part of the checkboard story I wasn't aware of. So it was a pleasure really to hear that. And so you launched checkboard. So you got a background in property. How did you find a technical partner? How did you go about starting Checkboard after identifying that problem clearly, and what would be a better solution?
Yeah, I would say my my background is I wouldn't call myself a coder, but I knew about a lot of no code solutions. So that was my first point of call. I started building Checkboard on Bubble, where I was able to piece everything together. And initially, it wasn't actually based on open banking at all. It was actually based on people submitting bank statements and what happens as per present day. I validated it, and I was mainly focused on the speed of it because I quickly wanted to find out very quickly, are you the right person to rent a property? And that was my initial objective. After validating that with myself and other landlords that I know in my network, I thought, right, it's time to get a more technical solution to the product, which involved open banking and the bells and whistles, I'll call it,
Yeah.
rather than just an upload and document feature. And yeah, and I found a technical co-founder, or yeah, a technical co-founder at the time, and they got to building what was the MVP of today's board. Very challenging journey and pulling it all together. But yeah, it's so far going in the right direction, so I can't complain.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So going from that first bubble version, which you used on yourself, to now having a MVP and customers, what do you think's been, your favorite moment so far?
My favorite moment so far has been the validation from landlords and estate agents confirming this product has actually made their lives amazingly easier. The factual information. So we will literally look at somebody's income and tell them from the person's income how long they've been with that employer for, and look at how much a rental transaction that they select and say, based on this rental transaction, they've been paying this rent for the last you know 12 months or so, and they have not missed a payment. These are objective facts that we obtain from the bank and that we quickly share with people within. And to hear from a landlord or an estate agent, this is brilliant, this is such an amazing product, does always give you a great feeling. And in one instance, we had a tenant not be so confident in going through the process. However, the estate agent actually reminded them of the reason why they had to go through it, and having that kind of backing, that kind of social proof, is very important, and definitely provides a feel good factor.
And so I think being able to provide objective data is really valuable. How would that work, for example, with, let's say, students or people who don't yet have that history? Are they part of your target group as well? Or do you have a different approach for them, or are they just not the right fit for Checkboard?
So at Checkboard, we have catered for unemployed people, students, retired, and employed and so we built unique flows for every single user type that we have thought about. Of course, there are some edge cases that we are yet to come across. So for students, essentially within Checkboard, when they select that they're a student, the next thing that we look to assess is if they have any income. Now, a student can be a student but have some income, or they might have savings. So at a given point in time, if they don't have an income, they're going to have their student loan or maintenance grant, which will be sitting in their bank account as cash. So we can pick this up through open banking and provide that objective or objective truth. However, in the event where they haven't got an income and they haven't got, student loan or maintenance, what we then do is we ask them to invite a guarantor who would be the one where that would be the person we do the check on as a guarantor. We would check if they've got the income to afford the rent in case the student was to not pay it. So I would like to say we have done our best to, account for several user types and user profiles, but so far so good.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the current approach would typically be to use a guarantor, but I guess what you're doing on top is providing a more objective experience in those cases, even when you wouldn't expect
Exactly.
data. So, no, that makes perfect sense. And since you've been working with clients and overcoming those edge cases, how has your understanding of the problem or your vision around the solution evolved since launching Checkboard?
Wow, that's quite a an interesting question as well. So originally we started with the understanding that we start with the understanding that Checkboard is to cater for the references and all the checks that an agency needs. One thing we haven't accounted for, or we didn't account for, were international students, essentially meaning people who are, moving into the UK to rent a property from another country, may not have a bank account on arrival. However, they do have a bank account in the country that they are, coming from. So it has opened, it's led to more, I would say, ideation around the product, and being able to do some objective truth on their bank account in a different country and kind of looking at that conduct, which is something that is not available today. If somebody is not based in the UK, it's quite challenging to capture that background from a different country. So we are exploring ways of doing so to enable people who are moving into the UK from other countries to have a seamless and easy journey, as well as UK nationals.
And so for those users, then I guess you need to wait for them to open up an account in the UK and
Exactly. Yeah. So we're currently expanding our open banking proposition to account for people from different countries and being able to look at those transactions rather than waiting for them to open a bank account. And even when they do open a bank account, it's not going to
yeah,
have many transactions in it. And secondly, when you run a credit check on them, you're not going to get any information.
yeah.
So a person that comes into the UK is practically a blank canvas
Mhm.
with no historic data to go off the back of. However, when you look at the bank account that they had in the country that they're coming from, you can then piece a better picture together about who they are and how they are likely to behave with your property.
Sure. And so I guess in terms of how you've seen Checkboard has been used so far and where you've had traction, where do you kind of see Checkboard going over the next 3-5 years? And do you think you will continue growing in property, or will you also expand to, other forms of checks?
Interestingly, we have had quite a number of inquiries for other industries. So, for example, well, fortunately, with a name like Checkboard, as I'm sure you can relate, Charles, with a name like Legislate, um, people think of your product and think, oh, what other things can you do? And we've been fortunate to fall into that category. And yeah, we are looking to expand into other forms of checks like KYB checks. So for business contracts and business partnership, we can help alleviate concerns on both sides with a quick, KYB check. Also, employment check is a field that we are looking to expand into, be for teachers, educators, doctors, nurses, the healthcare industry as well. So it is definitely something that we've got expanding into other industries as well over the next.
And I guess it's one step at a time.
Yeah,
Just,
exactly that. It's literally, taking it one step at a time.
cool. And you mentioned contracts and business partners. As a CEO, what are the key contracts that you interact with on a daily basis, or at least the most frequently?
I would probably say employment contracts for my teams. I've got partnership contracts where I'm signing agreements with our suppliers. I'm aware that they do KYB checks on me, but I'm soon to start doing KYB checks on them. And I think personally, I've also got the landlord contracts that I also look at as well.
Yeah. And you don't have a background in law, right? Um,
Yeah, I really don't have a background of law. I mean, whenever I see a contract, the first thing I do is quickly read through it, look for cancellation. That's one of the biggest one of the biggest things I look for. I'm just like, okay,
yeah.
I understand all of this. Where's the cancellation clause? But yeah,
Yeah.
so that's my focus anyway. I have no background in law, that's for sure.
And I don't have a background in law either, but I think the key thing that I wanted to highlight is it's not just lawyers who create and process and manage contracts. Lots of business people will create and manage contracts in their work. And part of what we're trying to do at Legislate is empower them to do that efficiently and safely.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And in those contracts that you do with your partners, or especially as you said, they'll be doing KYB checks on you. Are there any common objections that you find in the contract negotiation phase?
I I have I have yet to come across I've yet to come across contracts where I've been able to negotiate them. So I mean, most of the time I'm negotiating the price of the contract, right? That's like the first
Yeah.
and the most common thing to negotiate. Outside of that, cancellation clauses are something that sometimes I look at, negotiating as opposed to 12-month contract. I might look at, a 6-month contract, for example. But as most of the contracts I look at are currently supplier agreements,
Yeah,
it is slightly more different because I'm buying a service from them, and
sure.
these are companies much bigger than me, so much bigger than Checkboard at the moment. So on those bases, you've got standard agreements and standardized agreements. A lot of contracts or contract negotiations that I tend to come across come along within the employment space. Like employment contract, I do tend to have to kind of sometimes cater for different employee requirements, which I'm sure you probably are. One person might want a sign-on bonus and another person might not. I'm not going to ruin the fun for your guys at Legislate, but yeah, you just have to kind of negotiate or have the contract to tailor to what you've negotiated during the interview.
Sure. What would be your tips or piece of advice for a first-time negotiator?
First time employee or first time CEO negotiating? Which one? um,
Rule number one of negotiation is ask another question.
yeah, there you have it.
Yeah.
I,
No,
I, I think Yeah, I think from an employee perspective, it doesn't really harm to just ask the question if you have, a requirement or something you would like to achieve, or you might ask for, a higher salary, which is usually one thing that most people look at. But another piece that a lot of people fail to require or request is more holidays, or in asking for a more flexible agreement rather than if it's a 3 day work week or 3 day in the office work week, you might want to go for one or one every 2 weeks. These are all the other little perks that you can probably negotiate. As an employer, it kind of depends on the role, isn't it? It really depends on what you're trying to achieve and what you are looking to get out of the person's skills and experiences, and how you would like that to contribute to the business in a wider vision. So
yeah.
tailoring across that is quite important.
So I think the key insight here is don't be afraid to ask and listen and understand what the bigger picture is.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So we've got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
We've got a closing question, but before we close with the closing question, is there a question you'd like to ask me?
It'll be quite interesting if you can briefly share your experience and as to how you came about Legislate. It's
Yeah.
probably something I think, people would love to hear, including myself, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, similar to you, I experienced a problem firsthand. The problem that I experienced was negotiating contracts quickly enough to, proceed with the agreement and the deal. I wasn't a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but I was doing business development. And during contract negotiations, I would work closely with our lawyers, the other side's lawyers, and it just would always seem to last too long for simple, low value contracts, which were too low value for it to be a priority of the other side effectively. Because at the time, I was working at a startup and I wanted to effectively, with Legislate, allow the business users to reach an agreement without needing a full-on lawyer by our sides, and that's really where we started. So it's allowing business users who aren't lawyers to create, manage, and negotiate and sign contracts by themselves without lawyers. We again identified a technology which allows us to manage high volumes of contracts and also at the same time make use of contract data very easily. And we've been experiencing quite a lot of traction in property because there's a lot of people a lot of landlords in the UK at least, creating lots of tenancy agreements and other related documents. And really what we're trying to do is allow everyone to tailor contracts and offer just which are tailored to their requirements and legally compliant, and do it in such a way that it's a much better experience for everyone. It's a much safer experience, and everyone saves time, saves money, and finally, gets value from their contracts post signature with the insights. So yeah, that's been the journey, and we're also exploring other areas, including employment and small businesses, where they will have lots of legal documents to create, but not necessarily the legal resources. and we're going one step at a time, but we're confident that there is demand and there's room to grow.
That sounds super amazing. It just reminds me of how many times I've put together contracts on rocket law, um, which were probably not fit for purpose, but I had to make the edits myself.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm quite looking forward to the next time I need to put in place a contract using Legislate to do that.
Of,
As you've described, it intuitive.
of course, and really what we want to do is, those edits that you would do yourself and might make sense to you, they can have profound implications throughout the contract. And really, what we're trying to do
Yeah,
is give you the framework to make those edits and not have to worry about the implications. So,
sound good.
but yeah, let me know when you want to, and we'll give you the VIP treatment you deserve.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So now time for the closing question, which we ask every single guest of the Legislate podcast.
Yeah.
So, if you were being sent a contract to sign today, what would impress you?
What would impress me? Ooh. The layout of the contract is one very important thing. I think a lot of contracts have a very scattered layout. It's quite hard to kind of find the information that you're looking for. Sometimes that is done on purpose. I do not know if that's exactly true, but clear contract structure is probably, to me, the most important point because being able to quickly identify the points that I'm looking for and to be able to quickly and easily go through the contract and assimilate the information with ease is probably quite important to me. And I'll definitely be impressed by that. I've not come across many contracts that are structured in that way.
So contracts which are easy to read and well structured.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's something that we haven't 100% done at Legislate yet, but definitely something which is really important for our users and for our vision. So yeah, thank you very much, James, for your
thank
time. It's been a pleasure.
thanks.
Yeah, I look forward to doing checks and helping you create Legislate contracts.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Charles. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. Take
Thank
care.
you.